Sean O'Malley simply cannot afford to lose this fight. It's quite as simple as that. And whilst Sean O'Malley and his coach seem to think that he's fully locked in for this fight, Merab Dvalishvili is turning up the heat.
Yes, I do have extra motivation to finish this fight because first fight I was going easy on him, but this time I'm looking for finish.
So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why the stakes couldn't be higher for Sean O'Malley, where he is heading into this fight, and what are the consequences if he were to lose. Hello guys, and welcome back to Alex on MMA. As we're approaching fight week for this massive rematch between Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley, the guys are both doing the media rounds, so we're getting more of an idea of where these fighters are psychologically heading into UFC 316. So in today's video, I do want to be talking about what is at stake for Sean O'Malley. I think there's big consequences if he was to lose on Saturday night. But before we really dive into it, I do want to ask that you subscribe to the channel if you are interested in UFC chat. If you've been following these videos about UFC 316 so far, you'll know that I really like to dive into the details for these big matchups. Yes, maybe not like the MMA guru, I don't cover every single one of the fights on these cards. I prefer to take a really deep look into the main events or co-main events, so either title fights or big fights with title implications. And I do want this channel to be a place where we can discuss the narratives heading into these fights, who we think's going to win, anything that we're spotting that isn't necessarily in the mainstream media. So yeah, if you do have any opinions on this fight that you'd like me to discuss, please do leave them in the comment section below. In fact, in this video, there are a couple of comments from my previous video that I will be using to explain why I think that Sean O'Malley should be an underdog heading into this fight, and a couple of reasons that should give hope to Sean O'Malley fans heading into this fight. But anyway, let's get into it. And I want to start by talking about the fact that Sean O'Malley is getting this rematch in the first place. Is this a key example of Dana White privilege? Even though Sean O'Malley continues to push the narrative that it was a very close fight, or even that he got robbed. He was just on Israel Adesanya's podcast, a very good podcast, so do check that one out after this video. But Sean O'Malley definitely is pushing home the idea that it was a very close fight. I'm not sure if this is just him continuing to preach that undefeated brand that he's trying to have, but all these things do play a factor in why it would be so disastrous if he was to lose this rematch. But whether you think that he deserves the immediate rematch or not, this is where he finds himself. And I think the fact that he is getting this immediate rematch is a bit of a blessing and a curse. Obviously, it's a blessing because if he wins, he becomes champion again. So it does everything for his legacy, financial rewards, branding rewards, everything like that. But on the other hand, if he were to lose, it's a hell of a long road back. I compare him to someone like Robert Whittaker, who had to do it really the hard way to get that rematch with Israel Adesanya. He had to beat more of the top contenders in the middleweight division, and that would have added things to his arsenal, given him more experience. And although he lost the second fight to Izzy, the second fight was a hell of a lot closer than the first one. So I do think there are obvious benefits to O'Malley getting this immediate rematch. At the same time, I wouldn't have minded seeing him pick up a few more wins, beating some contenders. But as we're going to get to in this video, there's a reason why I think he opted to skip the queue rather than going the long way around. So why do I think the consequences are so dire if O'Malley were to lose this rematch? There's a few reasons for that. And the first one, we're going to have to go back to before the Petr Yan fight, where Sean O'Malley, he was an exciting contender, an exciting prospect, I should say, but he wasn't really considered as a contender. He'd had this spectacular finish on Dana White's Contender Series with that Snoop Dogg commentary. But really, even then, most fans and pundits weren't even thinking of him as a potential contender, let alone a title holder. He was an exciting fighter who seemed to have a few vulnerabilities with leg kicks and stuff like that. He'd lost to Chito Vera, and then he was given the opportunity, the big step up, to fight Petr Yan. Now, whichever way you scored that fight between Sean O'Malley and Petr Yan, there's no question it was a very close fight. Personally, watching it live, I did have Petr Yan winning that fight. I know the argument is that Sean O'Malley did a lot more damage on the feet, but Petr Yan, his takedowns looked so dominant. He was getting some good strikes off. I personally scored it for Petr Yan. And it was that fight that catapulted Sean O'Malley into the title shot. So before that fight, O'Malley was an exciting prospect, an exciting fighter, but his contender credentials, they were only solidified after beating Petr Yan in extremely controversial circumstances. It's as simple as that. What he did in that title fight against Aljamain Sterling, that's undeniable. He absolutely destroyed Aljamain Sterling, stepping out of the way, landing that massive right hand, a thing of beauty, and put Aljamain Sterling away. And you've got to think, after the Petr Yan fight and O'Malley getting taken down with relative ease, on paper, the Aljamain Sterling matchup was far from favourable for Sean O'Malley. However, he did the business in that title fight, and people were starting to put a bit more respect on O'Malley's name, considering him in the top 15 of the pound for pound list. And look, he was a legitimate UFC bantamweight champion, a champion in one of the most difficult weight classes in the whole organisation. So look, things were looking very good for Sean O'Malley. At the same time, that title fight didn't answer the questions that had been posed by Petr Yan in the previous fight, because Aljamain Sterling didn't really get his takedown game going against O'Malley. O'Malley was just able to blast him out of there. I believe it was in the second round of that fight, so he was never able to take O'Malley into those deep waters. Nobody was, until the rematch against Merab. So even though Sean O'Malley seemed to answer some questions when it came to durability, because in that first fight against Chito Vera was able to stop him with leg kicks, there were big question marks about, was Sean O'Malley tough enough, durable enough to hang with the best in the division? He seemed to have answered those questions because he went all the rounds with Petr Yan, he blasted out Aljamain Sterling, and even in the Merab fight, he did go all 5 rounds, even though Merab, he is a decision fighter, let's face it. But I do circle back to the fact that before that Petr Yan fight, Sean O'Malley was far from a title contender, and after winning that fight in controversial circumstances and showing suspect takedown defence, there seems to still be a bit of a glaring hole in his game, and that was exposed by Merab. So how much can Sean O'Malley have built on his takedown defence in the meantime? And look, I'm not trying to play down what Sean O'Malley has achieved. Becoming a champion in the UFC is an incredible achievement, and doing it against Aljamain Sterling, a fighter who had multiple title defences, is even more impressive. So fair play to O'Malley for that. But at the same time, I don't want to overlook the things that were exposed in the Petr Yan fight. The fact that he does have suspect takedown defence. Now, if you've been paying attention to social media, you'll have seen that Sean O'Malley and his camp are claiming to purely be focusing on grappling this camp. And there's 2 ways in which you can look at this, both the positive side and the negative side. The positive side is pretty obvious. First and foremost, the holes that were exposed by both Petr Yan and Merab Dvalishvili did reveal a deficiency in Sean O'Malley's grappling game. He got taken down far too easily by Merab, and the biggest sin you can commit against Merab is allowing him to get that early takedown, which will just get his tail up, get his confidence going, and when he gets in that rhythm, moving downhill, he's one of the hardest fighters in the UFC to stop. On the other hand, one of the big criticisms of O'Malley's performance in the first Merab fight was how cautious he was about the takedown. He wasn't putting his own stamp on the fight. He wasn't getting the shots off that normally see him do so well in fights. He was too cautious about the takedown, too accepting of the bad positions that Merab was putting him in, and allowing Merab to do the thing that he always does, flexing to the judges, kissing him on the back of the head, and all round just making it look really, really bad for the judges. However, there is a caveat in this, and this is based on a comment that somebody put on my previous video about the hip surgery that Sean O'Malley did undergo after this rematch. And it could be one of the reasons to explain why his takedown defense was so bad in that fight, why he looked so hesitant. Because if Sean O'Malley wasn't fully fit heading into this fight, if he did have concerns about injuries that he was holding in this fight, then that can help explain why he was questioning himself, why he was hesitant in this fight. And being hesitant is one of the worst things he can do against Merab. All it takes is for Merab to get a bit comfortable in there, not worrying about shots coming back his way. And if you hesitate, if you take a pause, he will just change levels, drive you against the fence and take you down. That's the way that he works. You need to keep Merab guessing, keep firing impactful, hurtful shots to his body, to his head, and don't allow him the time, the space to get that takedown. That's so important. But obviously, if Sean O'Malley wasn't fully fit in the fight, it does help explain why he wasn't at his best, why he wasn't moving in and out, not allowing Merab to get hold of him. So look, I guess what I'm saying is that Sean O'Malley may have improved his takedown defense, but due to his injuries, he just was unable to demonstrate that in the Merab fight. That is a real possibility. I don't want to bank on that because the Petr Yan fight and Merab fight both showed that Sean O'Malley can get taken down. But also, if he was nursing a hip injury, That would also help explain why he wasn't throwing as many kicks, that 5th round front kick that really did hurt Merab. If Sean O'Malley was dealing with a hip injury, then there's no way he would have been kicking as much as he normally would, because kicks involve hips, it's as simple as that. So look, that is some reason to be hopeful about Sean O'Malley. Right, so I'm going to move on to talking about why I think it's so devastating if he were to lose this fight. My prediction for this fight is going to be coming up later this week, so make sure you do subscribe if you haven't already. But one reason why I think it would be so devastating if Sean O'Malley was to lose this fight in a very similar way to which he did in the first fight is because the bantamweight division has so many unfavourable matchups for Sean O'Malley to get himself back to the top of the tree. You need to think, just 2 of the 3 contenders that spring to mind, Umar Nurmagomedov and the Petr Yan rematch, I'm sure that Sean O'Malley wants absolutely no part of the Petr Yan rematch. Why would he? He knows deep down, even if he doesn't think it was a robbery, he knows it was a really close fight. And when the fight was fought on Petr Yan's terms and the takedowns got involved, it just looked really bad for Sean O'Malley. And then you look at the other side of things and Umar Nurmagomedov. Now I know that Umar isn't quite as much of an all-out wrestler as Khabib and Islam Makhachev, but he can wrestle, he does wrestle. Look what happened in the Corey Sandhagen fight. Corey was unable to use his range, use his best weapons, because Umar was able to close that distance, get a hold of him and take him down. So Corey Sandhagen is the other contender we are going to mention, but looking at Sean O'Malley's potential routes back to the title if he was to lose this fight, it doesn't look great for him, let's face it. On the other hand, the Corey Sandhagen fight, that's a fight that everyone has wanted to see for years. It would be a really technical stand-up battle. I know that Corey Sandhagen can use takedowns when it suits him, like he did against Rob Font, but I think there might be a bit of a gentleman's agreement heading into this one that both fighters would keep it on the feet, outstrike each other, and I think it would be a really, maybe an all-out war, but I think it would be a very interesting chess match of the stand-up games. But the fact remains that I see that fight as a 50-50 as well. So if you're considering a 50-50 matchup with Corey Sandhagen and unfavourable matchups with Umar Nurmagomedov and Petr Yan, the road back to the title, if Sean O'Malley was to lose this fight, it looks pretty sketchy. So for that reason, it probably does make sense why he's taking this immediate rematch, even though this rematch is going to be such a difficult fight. But let's face it, if Sean O'Malley now is fully fit, if he doesn't have those injuries, if he's able to utilise the body kicks, the threat of the head kick against Merab early doors, then could this look like a very different fight? But we'll be getting into all of that later this week when I make my prediction video. There is another reason why I think that Sean O'Malley taking another loss, back-to-back defeats to Merab Dvalishvili, would be such a disaster. And look, I'm not thick, I'm not stupid. I know that his undefeated brand, that narrative that he likes to push, it is tongue-in-cheek. I'm sure that he recognises the L's that he took against Chito Vera and most recently against Merab. But at the same time, there's no denying the fact that another loss on his record at this stage of his career would have an impact in terms of his marketability, his branding, and I guess the financial gain that he's going to make as well. Suga Sean is a very well-off athlete. He's very rich already. If you've seen his ranch, the setup with his Octagon and Lamborghini, the guy's doing very well for himself. At the same time, it is undeniable that if he loses again now, not only is it a long road back to the title, it also does have an impact on his brand. He'll need to accept his status, at least in the meantime, as a contender. I'm sure that he could get another title shot, even with one more win after this fight. But it will impact his brand. It will impact the way in which the UFC markets him. Because at the moment, he's a bit of a poster boy. Yes, he's taken this loss, but he's got another opportunity to make things right. So the consequences are very real. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Ben McReynolds. When we spoke about Sean O'Malley's hip injury and the impact that would have had on his kicks, Ben McReynolds was the guy who commented on my previous video talking about that, so shout out to him. But anyway, let's move on and talk about the current title holder, Merab Dvalishvili, because at the start of this video, I played the clip where he mentioned that he's looking to finish Sean O'Malley. And does that impact the way in which we look at this fight? How much can you take about the things that are said by both fighters in the lead up to a fight? They're trying to sell the fight, promote it, because ultimately they get the financial gain by selling more pay-per-views. At the same time, I feel as though Merab will want to make more of a statement in this fight. Yes, he won the last one. Like he said, he thought it was easy. In this one, he will want to make more of a statement. Does this play into Sean O'Malley's hands? If Merab is out there doing very un-Merab things such as hunting for a finish. Could this play a major part in Sean O'Malley becoming the champion once again? Because it was Aljamain Sterling who went marauding forward, looking to really put it on Sean O'Malley, that meant that he ate a massive right hand that eventually knocked him out. So if Merab Dvalishvili is more aggressive in this fight with the hands, with the striking, with the ground and pound, could he be opening himself up to a possible counter? I think that is a real possibility. At the same time, am I putting that much weight into what Merab's saying? Am I expecting Merab to do much of the same, which has seen him on this 12-fight win streak? Most probably. But if he is out there headhunting, looking for the finish, don't be surprised if Sean O'Malley is able to set a trap that Merab Dvalishvili unwillingly falls into. That could really happen. But anyway, that's been this video. I did want to make a point of what is at stake for Sean O'Malley, because I feel like there's a hell of a lot riding on this fight. I know it's a title fight, the guy's still at the very top of the game, but everything in which the way in which he markets himself, the way in which he brands himself, I think that these could all take a massive hit were he to lose on Saturday night. And based on what we saw in the Petr Yan fight and the Merab Dvalishvili fight, there are still glaring holes in his game that I think do need to be addressed. Yes, the injury may have played a part. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I've overstated his takedown weakness, or have I overstated the fact that the injury may have compromised him last time? Do let me know. And like I said, if you are new here, please do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.